Hello everyone, I hope you are doing great. You are looking after yourself, you're looking after your well-being, which brings me to the conversation that matters today. I would love to engage on mental well-being, and in particular, I've been thinking a lot about what is going on. Why are we having such a high prevalence of mental health cases? What causes it? And I couldn't help but reflect back to 25 years ago and realize that some of the challenges that we faced back then as mental health practitioners or as health practitioners were issues around stigmatization on mental health issues, matters of limited understanding on mental illnesses, and as a result, not many people were coming forth and seeking help. It's quite interesting that today we are seeing such an exponential rise in mental health cases globally. Everywhere you go, people are talking about mental health. Casual conversations, people talk about, you know what, for my mental well-being. So it has become such a common thing, and it got me really thinking deeply and trying to understand what is going on and where we are heading. And what can we do as a society to prevent this high prevalence or the spiraling of mental health cases that we are seeing in our society? Please feel free, because there's wisdom in the collective. Feel free to share with us how you have seen other people manage this issue, how you're managing it also in your own space, so that we can learn from each other. I am going to share my views around what are some of the behavioral things that I believe we can incorporate in our day-to-day living to minimize the onset of mental health cases in our families, in our work environments, in schools, in our communities, and in our society at large. It is quite concerning, as I say, the high number of mental health cases that we are seeing. On the one hand, it's encouraging, because what that tells me as a practitioner is we have more people with a better understanding and awareness of mental issues. Possibly we are beginning to destigmatize mental issues, and people are comfortable to seek help. The reality is not everyone in our society is in a position to afford mental health care. The majority of our population might not have the capability to see a psychiatrist or to see a psychologist. And what that means from a society, both psychologically and spiritually, is that as more and more people experience mental health issues, but yet they cannot afford professional mental help, we're going to be sitting with a society that has a high prevalence of psychological and emotional distress. What that means is, generationally, the current generation and the future generation has a potential of not really maximizing their full capability and become successful. So there is a risk, as far as I'm concerned, if we don't proactively take responsibility to mitigate the onset of mental health cases within our families and in our engagements and interactions with one another. While it is encouraging to see that as early as elementary schools, teachers are beginning to talk about mental health cases and educating learners on how to identify and manage the day-to-day stressors. We're seeing organizations incorporating mental health as part of their holistic well-being offerings. That is all great, but as I said, my concern is not everyone has the capability. And as people experience mental health issues, the chances of the cost of medication escalating and increasing is a possibility. What that means also is that even those that are affording now might struggle in future. So what are some of the things that we can do as individuals in our day-to-day engagement with one another to reduce mental health issues? I mean, there are, in my mind, I tend to look at things from a long-term perspective, from a spiritual perspective, much as I'm a psychologist. I always know that in everything that we do, a person has three aspects to their being. You have a body, there is a soul, which is where issues of emotional, mental, and psychological issues are housed, but also you have a spirit being. So if your spirit being is not well, then it's going to affect your psychological being and vice versa. So I tend to think about things in that way, and I hope that we start seeing that mental health issues are not things that we can joke about. They are not things that we can take lightly, because they actually do have a ripple effect that can be negative unless we take a stand to say, how do we start behaving differently when we engage with one another to eradicate mental health cases? When I look, for example, at the top 10 prevalent mental health cases that are reported globally, almost 80%, if not more, of those cases stem from behavioral or social interactions. Yes, there is a reality that some mental health cases could be as a result of biological, neurological, physiological, substance-induced mental health cases, and sometimes as an outcome or a result of past traumatic experiences. But it was quite alarming to realize that the majority, a significant number of the cases that we are sitting with today have their root in behavioral. I'll give you an example. I've looked at the top two, which is depression and anxiety. The symptoms that are associated with both depression and anxiety include feeling of worthless, feeling hopelessness, excessive fear, excessive worry, loneliness, being rejected, amongst many others. Just by listening to these symptoms, you can also tell that no one person wakes up one day and they are suddenly anxious or they are suddenly depressed. It doesn't happen. Then it tells me that there's something that you and I can change in our behavior with other people to prevent onset of mental health or even the perpetuation of mental health cases. For a person to get to a state where they are eventually diagnosed with an anxiety or depression, it is because over a continued period of time in their interactions with people, either at home, at school, or in the work environment, or combination, you continuously made to feel you are not good enough, you are not worthy, you are always criticized, sometimes you are yelled at work you are micromanaged. It is just stress over and over again. Yes, there are people who have the natural ability to bounce back and deal with this type of challenges, but not everyone has that capability, and hence we find this high prevalence of mental health cases because of the ongoing stresses that we place on one another in our day-to-day interactions. Society has become very different now, and I think it's about time we sit back and really reflect and think about what is the type of future that we want for our next generation. Even if we're not doing it for us, I always say, even if I'm not doing it for myself, we need to always think about the future generation. What is the type of generation that we want to see? There is so much potential that we have as human beings, but most of the time the potential is not leveraged or realized because people are bogged down by behavioral and relational issues. So I believe that you and I can really influence the trajectory of mental health cases. And in my mind, as I was thinking about these challenges and saying, practically, what can we do? What can you and I do on a day-to-day basis? I came up with 7 behaviors that if we all incorporate, it will go a long way in creating social and family environments that are in harmony, that are peaceful, where people are happy, where there is joy, where there is peace, and then by implications, very little onset of mental health cases, because mental health cases stems from relationships. If your in social interactions is different and positively different, people will experience positiveness in their engagements, and their overall well-being will be reflecting that which they are experiencing in their day-to-day interactions. So what can we do? So what can you and I do? As I said, in my mind, and I'm looking forward to getting your opinions also, because we can learn from one another. I can only share my views, but I know that there is wisdom in the collective out there. Please feel free to share in the comments any other nuggets that the community can learn from. I'll share you my views. The first thing that in my mind we need to start focusing on is the mind itself. You see, the mind is the most powerful engine that determines everything that we do. It shapes our thoughts, it shapes our feelings, it shapes our decisions, how we engage with one another, and most importantly, who we become. How do you renew your mind? Start by being cognizant about who you listen to. What are you feeding your brain with every day? Who are the people in your network? What are you benefiting from some of the things that you listen to? What is taking up most of your time? Are you focusing on things that are positive, or are you focusing on things for the sake of the vibe because everyone is listening? So what are the things that you are putting in your brain that are stimulating in a positive way? So that's where we need to begin. Focus on positive things. Number 2, I believe that we need to watch the posture of our heart, because out of our heart comes issues of life. Life and death really is dependent on how we see one another. So when you start behaving in a negative way with other people, or when you start being irritable, you need to pause and guard your heart and check the posture of your heart and say, oops, what could be happening? Is this the type of response that I would want to get from other people? So I think those simple exercises will help us. The third thing that I believe we can do is taming our tongue. Your tongue is dangerous. So we need to be cognizant and mindful of what we say about ourselves and what we say about other people. Even when you have been diagnosed with anxiety, as an example, I encourage that you don't own it. Be careful around what you say and owning that, because there's power in your words. Whatever that you speak, you are bringing to life. So when you speak certain things to people, realize that you are birthing certain things in their life. Speak blessing. But because when you start speaking blessing in other people's lives, they will be blessed. So be careful of what you say about yourself and what you say about other people. The 4th thing that I could think of is preserving humanity. Behave in a humane manner. And humane means you treat people the way you would like for them to treat you. It's the essence of humanity is really Ubuntu. Treat people with respect, treat people with dignity, compassion, with kindness. Strive for peace in all engagements that you have, and most importantly, learn to forgive. It doesn't do you any good by holding any grudges. Learn to forgive. Every time people do you wrong, forgive, forgive, forgive all the time. Number 5, build skills and capabilities that will strengthen your psychological muscles. That could be things like emotional intelligence, because life is about engaging with other people, and you need to be emotionally and socially intelligent when you engage with others. Issues around resilience. Life is very stressful. Change is a norm. It happens all the time. Whether you're at work or in society, there's always change. Stress management and conflict resolution. Those are at least the 4 basic skills that I believe when you have built as tools, in your psychological toolbox, you stand a greater chance of not experiencing mental health, but also not creating mental health challenges in the lives of those around you. Number 6, learn to walk away from toxic relationships. Step away from relationships that make you feel you are not good enough, relationships where you are belittled, be it at work, be it in your social networks. You're not doing yourself any justice by staying in relationships that are toxic. Number 7, love yourself and love other people. Remember, love is not a feeling. Love is an act. And because it's an action, it's a choice that you make to engage with other people in a loving manner. So I hope that the few 7 nuggets that I have shared, when you incorporate, you will start seeing change in your life, but also in the lives of other people. And as I had requested, there is wisdom in the collective. Please feel free to share your ideas, your input, so that we can help one another and really eradicate these spiraling mental health cases, because it's in our control. Everything that I have said, it's really in our control. And I believe that when we start acting, move beyond listening and hearing, but start taking action. You might not implement everything that I have said. You might have implemented some of the things that I have shared, but if maybe there's one thing that you say, I am going to take this one and I'm going to implement, I want to encourage that you run with it and see the benefits of the behavior change that you would have introduced in your life, not only for yourself, but also for those that are around you. Until the next conversation, I am looking forward to hearing your inputs and your comments. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I want to encourage that you subscribe. If you have been blessed by the recording, press like, share it with other people, and let's be a blessing to many other people.